Welcome to Sales Secrets from the Top 1%, where the world's best sales experts share their secrets to sales success. My name is Brandon Bornanson, a serial salesperson and entrepreneur, and I'm sitting down with the world's best sales experts to share their top secrets to sales success. Hello, welcome to Sales Secrets from the Top 1%. It's Brandon Bornanson here, your host and author, and today I am thrilled to be joined by Jason McElhone. Jason is the Director of Inside Sales at MarketSource, where he's got over 27 experiences. That's nearly 3 decades specializing in B2B sales, lead generation, social selling, you name it. And as of late in 2018, Jason played a pivotal role in helping MarketSource drive more than $7 billion. That's a B, baby. B for baby, big money. $7 billion in revenue growth for its clients. This guy, Jason, I'm thrilled to have you on the show. You've done over 1 million cold calls since 92, 50 face-to-face meetings in 1 week, 2,500 qualified leads and 125 new sales programs at MarketSource. You've got over 27,000 LinkedIn followers, 3 million views on social media. What is the Kool-Aid that this guy is drinking? Holy shit. Welcome to the show, Jason. Thanks for taking the time on the day before Thanksgiving to join us today.
Brandon, major pleasure of mine. Appreciate you having me.
Dude, so first off, thank you so much. To give you an update on the show. So this is for the book. This is for the show. Sales Secrets from the Top 1%, where the world's best sales experts share their secrets to sales success. And we're super jacked up, excited to hear what your number one secret to sales success is. But before we do that, before we get that from the men that's made over 1 million cold calls, I want to know how the hell did you get here? How did you get into sales? What is your background? Where did you come from? Give me like the backstory of this revenue and market generating game changer.
Absolutely. I started my career in 1992 as a stockbroker. So I got my Series 7 license, moved from New York where I grew up, and I settled in Fort Lauderdale at the ripe young age of 22 years old. And I ended up at one of the firms that was actually one of the sister companies in the Wolf on Wall Street movie. Stratton Oakmont was one that was featured that Leo DiCaprio had.
No way.
Yeah, I was at another one by the name of Biltmore Securities in Fort Lauderdale. So I was making 300-400 calls a day, big stack of D&B leads. Got my license. Quickly kind of figured out that was going to be the wrong place for me to establish my career. So I moved on to a couple of other boutique firms, eventually went into business for myself in 2000.
Wow. So, oh my gosh, I've never talked to someone that, was selling at Oakmont, Stratmount, or a competitor.
Yeah.
Like, what? So how did you get into that brokerage? Like, what made you decide to go in there? Take me way back. How did you even get started in sales? How did you even think to want to do that?
Yeah, it was actually, you could probably make a movie on the story alone. It was my sister and her then boyfriend, who became husband, just got in a car, a 1988 Red LeBaron in upstate New York, and headed south on 95 to Florida. We got an apartment in a little town called Pompano Beach. And I literally went down to the corner store, got a paper, and responded to a job ad.
No.
And that next Tuesday, I was one of about 50 kids that were being interviewed at Biltmore.
Unbelievable. So it's literally very similar to like Jordan Belfort looking up in the newspaper and getting a job when shit hit the fan, except you were you had no experience. This was the first gig.
Absolutely. And, I got to be careful on the details that I share with you, but I will say for anyone who has seen the movie, it's 99.9% accurate, a little bit of embellishing here and there, but it was an absolutely out of control, wild and crazy time.
Oh my God. That's so awesome. That's insane, man. Oh my gosh. So walk me through, and this is just crazy because I love that movie, and Jordan Belfort's a character. Leo plays him, crushes it. Tell me about like, you apply, you get the job. Walk me through, because these companies know how to hire, train, and sell and close. And I feel like I miss like companies that pitch selling and closing. I miss it a little bit, but
Yeah.
tell me about like everything about that experience. From how did you get trained? What was the process? What did they do? Like, how did you start performing, going from zero to sales over there? Like, I'd love to just hear about it.
Yeah, and I totally agree with that from the standpoint that when you have 200 or 300 young men and women in a pit together, most of us were absolutely clueless. But when you start to feed off the energy, when you're learning the business, you're studying for your Series 7, you start getting on the phone and you're calling, CEOs, CFOs of $10 billion companies. It helps you work through the kinks and survive the rejection that, as you know, is just a normal part of the sales business, especially when you're young.
Wow. Yeah. So what was the training like there? Like, what was the first 90 days like?
It was literally, we went into a room. You had to stand up and tell the person that was doing the interview, just like the movie. If you saw the movie, why are you here? Why do you want to make money? What makes you think that you're any different from anybody else? And I obviously slung some BS and was able to pass the test. And I literally showed up that was a Friday. I showed up the following Monday. And if you remember in the movie, the scene where they offered to shave a woman's head for 10 grand,
Yep.
at the time I had a kind of a surfer cut that was short on the side and wavy on the top.
Oh my gosh.
And I came in over the weekend with a shaved head. And I won't mention his name, but the guy that was running Biltmore at the time noticed that I had cut my hair. And he's like, "You get up here in the front of the room." And they bring me up in front of the room with like 300 or 400 people. And he goes, "What did you do to your hair?" I said, "I shaved my head." He goes, "Don't you know that we would have given you 5 grand to do that in front of everybody?"
What?
So they were making it was if you saw the movie, it
Yep.
was total mayhem, but it was, in terms of the training, it was the work ethic that they instilled in us. When you're 22, 21 years of age, and you have to sit down at your desk and call someone who's, in most cases, a multimillionaire, because we were only calling accredited investors, and you literally have to make 300 or 400 calls a day without any of the technology that we see with something like a Connect and Sell. It's literally 8 to 10 hours of nonstop dialing.
Wow.
And as you know, you're not going to find many sales floors these days that, let's say, force their SDRs into making that kind of a volume in terms of calls.
No, they should, but they should, but they don't. Wow, dude. So you were back in the day, you joined the brokerage, and you're literally making 300, 400 cold calls a day to accredited investors.
Right.
You bought the lead. So Seamless didn't exist yet. Uh, so you got it from our investor though. DNB is one of our investors. So you guys would buy these leads, these accredited investor leads
Right.
from DNB.
Right. I mean, you'd literally have a stack, just like, again, in the movie, you'd have a stack on your desk about 4 or 5 inches thick. And you had to get through 300 or 400 of those every day. So we started dialing at 8 o'clock in the morning, and we weren't done in most cases until 5 or 6 at night. And some would stay even longer to call the West Coast.
Wow. So the training, like how did they train you? They just gave you like a script? How was the process like?
Yeah, I did. There was several stages. So you had the cold callers, then you had the account openers, and then you had, the big broker. So
Okay.
again, I correlate to the movie. I was one of the initial waves of the cold callers, and I was only there for about a month and a half. So it was literally, my entire day was trying to make 300 or 400 calls, and the goal was to get somewhere between 8 and 10 qualified. So you had to have, are they in the market? what are 2 or 3 stocks that they currently hold, what brokers are they currently working with, and are they open to an idea? So after you got the yes to all the above, we'd send them a brochure and a package, and that following week, the account opener would call, kind of like the scene where Leo opened the account at that pink sheet firm. And then once that client was onboarded, the bigger broker would come in with, what they called the load, where they pitch him 200-300 grand worth of stock.
Unbelievable. So you would basically book these appointments for the loaders, and then once it was qualified, they would basically pitch it, and then the loaders would close those deals for the brokerage.
Correct.
Okay. Wow, dude. So it's kind of like the SDR AE model now in SaaS, but back then it was probably just like not as structured.
Yeah. The cold callers back then are what you would call an SDR now. You're out pounding the phones, you're sending out email, you're doing social touches, all trying to generate demand and, get a quote qualified lead. Once you got a qualified lead, back then that's when the account opener would step in and try and pitch the potential client on a stock, usually a big name like Pepsi or GE. So there was some familiarity. That way the major objection of, I've never heard of the stock you're pitching, is out of the way if I'm talking to you about Pepsi or General Electric. And once that client was onboarded, the equivalent of what you would call the account executive, or maybe even in some cases the VP of sales, would get on the phone and go after the bigger order.
Wow. And then how long were you there for?
I was at that firm, like I said, for about 6 weeks, but then I jumped to 2 other firms. I had 5-year stints at both. They were what you were called, small cap firms where we did some private placements, some investment banking.
Yep.
And then in 2000, I went off on my own and basically started to trade my own money alongside, clients of mine. At the time I had 50 to 100 accredited investors that I had discretion over.
Wow. That's crazy, dude. That is nuts. Was it hard to build the book of business?
Yeah, if you get in the brokerage, and it's similar to any business, I'm sure you're going through that now. If you don't have at least a 3 to 5 year time horizon that you're willing to work your rear end off to build your book of business, you're not going to make it. So yeah, it was very, very difficult. But once you hit a critical mass, and that's usually around 50 investors, particularly if they're accredited, you can absolutely make a very significant living.
Wow. Yeah. I love your recommendation around 3 to 5 years, because I feel like a lot of people newer to sales, and to give you an idea, the people that are watching and listening to the book, the podcast, the videos, they're either, they're performing okay, maybe average, and they're looking to go from good to great in sales.
Mm-hmm.
Then you've got the people that are performing great, maybe making 6 figures, 100K, 150K, 80K, and they want to go, from 100K to $500,000, from 100K to $1 million.
Yeah.
And, you're an expert that sold to, in my opinion, selling to accredited investors who are extremely intelligent. I just sold to accredited investors, and it was the hardest money in my life I ever had to get, because I fundraised millions of dollars for our startup. It was terrible. It was fucking terrible.
Especially now, as you know, we've had a major raging bull market for 10 years up until just recently, now that the market's gotten whacked pretty hard here in the last couple of months. But you were competing with, 15 or 20 other firms that were raising seed capital. And if you don't have something,
thousands,
yeah.
We're competing with thousands now.
Yeah. So if you don't have something that's equivalent to a slam dunk, it's very hard to break through, but you've obviously done that, and congratulations.
Thank you, man. Thank you. But it's funny, because every year, 4 years ago, when we started building the technology, no one would talk to us. 3 years ago, no one would really talk to us. 2 years ago, no one would really talk to us. But then, because we have a 10-year mindset where we're on it only for 10 years. And if we have a huge success or an exit before then, we win. So we know going into it, we're going to have that long-term mindset, that marathon mindset. how important is that from what you've seen in your success? How important is it to be patient in sales?
That's an excellent question. And I correlate it to what I see going on in the marketplace right now. As you know, most people are hopping around every 2 to 3 years.
I see it
And
all the time, 2 years.
especially with the younger folks, the millennials, if you will, they get the itch after 12 to 18 months and they want to move on. In my experience in both the brokerage business and the almost 12 years that I've been at MarketSource, it's at least 3 to 5 years to get past that initial ramp to where you're starting to build momentum. You're starting to generate a significant number of referrals. And that's when you see the quote unquote hockey stick growth. So one of the biggest challenges I see in anyone who's managing or leading SDRs right now is the turnover. How are you going to generate significant momentum for yourself or your company if every 12 to 24 months you're moving on to the next gig? And I would not be surprised if that starts to slow down a little bit. I know I'm contrary in that opinion, but I think you've got to be around a little longer than a year or two to make a major impact.
Wow. At least, right? Probably at least.
Yeah.
If not like 20x more.
Yeah. Now, I understand if you're an SDR and you want to get yourself up to a director and eventually a VP. If you're at a firm that doesn't have what you mentioned, the long view, then yeah, it is time to move on. But if you join an organization, whether it's MarketSource or Seamless.ai, and the leadership is really clear that, hey, this is about the next 3, 5, 10 years. And here's how I see an SDR progressing to a director and eventually a vice president and so on. If that's not there, then yeah, you've got my permission to move along. And that, in my opinion, is also what's going to separate, the real leaders, the real winners from the also-rans, is if they don't have that long-term vision.
Yeah. Wow. So, okay. So you left the Oakmont. Yeah. What was that from?
It was at Biltmore.
Biltmore. Yeah. I think did he mention Biltmore in the movie? I feel like that sounds familiar.
I don't know if it was mentioned or not, but they were very closely aligned. They were out of New York. We were out of Fort Lauderdale.
By the way, I never got this shaving thing. Like, does that like jack you up? Like, I didn't understand that in the movie.
Well, back then it was just a dare. They were constantly doing things that were off the wall and ridiculous, in some cases demoralizing, but they'd be willing to give you $5,000 or $10,000 to do it.
Okay.
And again, you and I could talk for hours and hours and hours about some of the stuff that went on behind the scenes, but it's probably not the smartest thing for me to do, given my current position, with the company.
No worries. So tell me about the experience at the 5 years that you were selling for 5 and 5 at the other two stock brokerage firms?
Yeah. And then I was on my own for about 7 years. And in 2008, I, along with many other folks, got my rear end kicked because I was way over leveraged in the options market.
Oh shit. So do you know how to trade and like buy options and stuff?
Yeah, I still buy and sell, not significant amounts of money anymore, but for my own account. And at the time in 2008, I had seen, and if you saw the movie Margin Call, that a real estate crash was coming. The only problem is, at the time, I didn't have enough experience in the options market, so I didn't take into consideration what's called time value. So all the options that I was buying in 2006 and early 07 expired worthless. And then it was basically a run on the bank. I had to downsize out of Florida. I moved to Georgia with my then fiance. I built a house out in what you would call suburbia. And I survived for another year or so, but then, it just became too much and I had to, exit the business, and officially I went bankrupt.
Yep. I've been there before, so I get it, man. Holy shit. So you went through the hell.
Yeah.
And got your ass kicked.
And by the way, I would consider it to be one of the best things that ever happened to me.
Me too.
As a young man, I was making millions of dollars at a big house in Florida, boats, cars,
So fucking awesome.
The whole, out of control lifestyle that was kind of emulated in the movie.
Yep.
And then I got overly leveraged in what are called NASDAQ QQQ options. And I was right about the crash, but I was wrong about the timing. Had I waited or extended my terms, another year, I'd have made a fortune and I'd still be in the business. But I lost everything, and I can still remember sitting in the bankruptcy court being totally shamed and humiliated. But looking back on that is exactly what I needed to humble myself. And it was shortly after that I went into, again, another interview that I got through a friend at MarketSource. And they said, "Hey, we don't have any lead gen. Do you know anything about cold calling?"
Oh my gosh. Does
So
this guy know anything about
as a
cold
matter
calling?
of fact, I do. So I was able to get myself out of, the blue collar world after I went bust and started to build lead gen from scratch at MarketSource. And in the last 12 years, we've almost more than quadrupled our business, on our way to about $1 billion in revenue in the next 5 years.
Damn. Dude, I love your story. I love it because my fiance is a bankruptcy attorney, and nowadays, it's interesting. Like everyone's always so over leveraged, which is good. Like in a way, like I say it's good because people are taking more risks or they're just spending way too much that they don't have. So I love hearing when people took real big fucking swings and they could have hit a home run or a grand slam, which is, it sounds like you were about to do. And, you just missed and struck out. And wow, dude, that's incredible. I have a similar experience. So like, I know that pain, like my family, like mainly due to Alzheimer's and then also the crash, like my family had to go through that. I personally lost everything almost twice, almost definitely once, had millions and then lost millions on a business venture. How does someone, I know how I rebounded, and I share that a lot with the audience. Tell me about how the hell do you get back up? You're in bankruptcy court, right? And how the fuck do you get up off the floor and say, I will not let this keep me down? Like, dude, I know you've had to have like been through a lot from going from the bottom back up to the top. Walk me through it all. Because most people need to hear how guys like you go from top to bottom or bottom to top.
I can give you the exact moment that I hit rock bottom. I went through bankruptcy. I'd lost my house, my retirement accounts, all my toys. My fiance left, and I can't say that I blame her because it got really, really bad. I actually ended up at a factory, and I was boxing Craftsman tools into boxes and loading them onto pallets that would go onto a UPS truck. And I went from making millions of dollars in my 20s and early 30s to making $9 an hour at this factory. And I remember going into the bathroom one day, and it was hot as heck. It was the middle of the summer. And I look in the mirror, and I had to wear these goggles for protection. And I just looked at myself and I thought, what the hell happened to you? You've lost everything and you've ended up here. And all the time that I'd been working there, and this was about for 6 months, I was in resistance to what was. It wasn't until then I accepted my full responsibility for what I did. I accepted that I was broke and I was making $9 an hour. And I walked out of that bathroom determined to get back up on my feet, stop pointing fingers at anybody, including myself. And it wasn't a week or two after that, I ended up at MarketSource. And, as they say, the rest is history.
Wow, dude. Yeah, dude. I love the people that have really been through this shit that aren't making it up. When I interview, you always remember the super freaking straight line details. What are the details of like the exact place at the exact time that you had the massive mental breakdown and you felt like you were at rock bottom?
Yep.
Wow, dude. And I broke down. I don't know. Like I was crying. Like I'm okay to say that. Like I remember when it happened to me when my startup, like I had to steal food out of a fridge to eat at my second startup. I had the same thing. I made millions on my first startup. Second startup, I lost it all. I had a negative balance, payroll I couldn't even pay, was stealing to eat food. Like I remember in my startup office at the age of 20, 18, 19, yeah, 20, I just sat there and I was crying and I was like, how the fuck did I get here? I was like, I used to be at the top. Now I'm this fucking loser. Did you break down? Like, how was that?
Oh, absolutely. And like most, I was in denial and resistance. Big tough guy, had made something of himself as a young man, and there was a lot of shame that went with working at the factory. But at the same time, when I finally broke down in that bathroom and I accepted the reality and the responsibility that I had taken some actions in my youth that were wrong, I was way over leveraged, I was living a lifestyle that I was, looking back now, I'm not proud of. I had to go through that pain. I had to get my butt kicked. I had to lose it all, including my self-esteem and my dignity. And it wasn't until I accepted full responsibility that I was able to get back on my feet. And in a relatively short period of time, I mean, within a year, I had built my first house. And since then, I've built and sold 3 homes in the last 10 years. And, looking back to where I was from that day in the bathroom, you wouldn't think it would be possible, but it is. So my real quick message to anybody who's struggling or recently lost a loved one, I know you have. Both of my parents have passed in the last 3 years. My dad just a few months ago.
I'm so sorry, man.
Yeah, I appreciate that. No matter how bad it is, no matter how big of a downfall you've had, once you fully accept responsibility for what happened and you start to take small steps to dig yourself out of the hole, you'll be amazed how quick you can get back on your feet.
Dude, that's amazing. From millions in the stock market, working at one of the top stockbrokers, competing with Oak Straught, and then going to the 2 firms. What were the 2 firms called that you were at again?
I was at a firm called Joseph Dillon, then Greenway Capital, and ended up at Brook Street Securities.
Joseph Dillon, Greenway Capital, Brook Street Securities, and then lose everything, go bankrupt. You hit rock bottom, and how did you? And then you said you assumed responsibility for everything, and you got up from that breakdown, from losing it all, from being super like, holy shit, like this actually, like I've lost it all. How did you, like, walk me through, like, how did you end up at MarketSource? How did you do that? How did you, like, I'm still could want to dig a little bit deeper. Like, how did you end up from that in the factory? You go to take a factory job, $9 an hour after making $1 million a year. And like, I don't know, walk me through the little gap and then we'll go into MarketSource.
Yeah. And by the way, I was never bringing down $1 million a year, but all told, it was close to $10 million over a 2-year period or a 10-year period. So
it was a shitload of money. It
was a lot of money. Again, this could be a really, really long story, but my ex-brother-in-law was a DBO, or what you might call a VP of sales at Aerotech.
Yes.
And Aerotech is one of our sister companies at Allegis Group. So he was like, you got to get yourself out of that factory, man. You've got way too much talent. Stop feeling sorry for yourself. And he helped me get an interview at MarketSource. And that was shortly after, Allegis Group, our big parent company, which does about $14 billion in revenue now each year, had bought MarketSource. So it was literally getting in on the ground floor. We were a sub $100 million company. Now we're approaching $500 million a year in annual revenue. And they were they were kind enough to give me a chance when I was really down and out.
Yeah, that's insane. So you just got lucky because of one of your buddies brought you in? Like, who was that guy that brought you in again?
It was my ex-brother-in-law.
Your ex-brother-in-law.
Right.
So he was cool enough. Now, was he your ex at the time? Ex-brother-in-law at the time or no?
No, he was my brother-in-law at the time.
Okay. Got it. I was going to say, like, that's pretty cool of him to bring you in as your ex-brother-in-law.
No, I mean, he was not working at the firm, but he did help me get that interview that turned into a 12-year career.
Got it. So you get the job, MarketSource. Did you even know what they were? Did you even care to work there because like you just needed a new job? Walk us through that real quick.
Yeah, I did not know who they were. I knew they were in the sales outsourcing business, but looking back, I knew absolutely nothing about the company, and it took me about 12 to 18 months to figure out what I was doing.
Wow, 12 to 18 months to sell outsourced selling.
Well, at the time, we were, like I said, we were trying to build lead gen from the ground up. And the concept of B2B sales outsourcing 12 years ago was in its very early years. It's very common now if you go into retail, most of the retail sales staff is outsourced to a third party. But most of the Fortune 1000 companies that we're going after right now, fewer than 5% are using an outsourced sales party, third party vendor on a regular basis.
Yep.
So trying to convey the value prop and convince folks in the very first inning, top of the second, on who we were and what we did, it took a good year to 18 months to get our feet under ourselves.
Oh, I bet you were probably just trying to even figure out who to sell to, how to pitch it, how to present it, what the services were. Well, that's crazy.
Yeah, back then, it's who's the right persona. We really didn't know. We thought it might have been VP of sales. But now looking back over the last 12 years, we know we've got 5 or 6 personas. For example, you might be talking to a CFO. Their biggest concern is reducing the cost of sale. So if you can show them how to do more with less, they're definitely going to be interested in what you have to say. Marketing, a CMO is going to be more concerned with digital transformation. Do they have a social selling platform? And if not, why not? So, but back then it was a whole mess of trying to figure out the right persona, the right message. We eventually got our feet under ourselves, and like I said, in the last 12 years, we've grown by more than 400 or 500%.
Wow, dude, that's incredible. Congrats. That's amazing. And by the way, I just realized I had one question that I didn't ask you before MarketSource. How the hell did you stay motivated? And what were the habits and the activities to make 300 to 400 cold calls a day? Like, what is that? So if you work 8 to 10 hours, I don't know how many freaking minutes that is. That's let's just do 10. There's 60 minutes. It's 600 minutes divided by 300 cold calls. You're doing a call every minute.
Yeah.
Every minute.
In fact, that was the formula that we knew we had. We had to make a phone call every minute, and that included, the 10 to 15% that would answer the phone. So you might have a 2-3 minute call, but as you know, 80 to 85% of the time, nobody's home, and we were not leaving voicemail back then. You can't make 400 dials a day and leave voicemail. So it was literally as fast as your fingers could dial. And, the 1 in 10 or thereabouts that pick up the phone, you had to get the qualified lead. And I mentioned some of the criteria earlier.
That's insane. Was it hard to stay motivated to do that day in, day out?
Again, I go back to the movie. When you're one of 200 or 300 young people and you're surrounded by all the glitz and the glamour, it's almost intoxicating from the standpoint that you feel like you're part of something gigantic.
Yep.
Looking back, it was a house of cards in that they were pitching companies that really didn't have any sound, strong fundamentals. But in terms of the sales training, the work ethic, the what it takes to talk to somebody of a much higher caliber, a much higher persona than where you are at 22 years of age, that's something that I would never trade for the world.
Yeah, that's incredible. Were there any like habits? Just because I feel like we're a little soft now. Like, and you can tell me if I'm wrong, Jason, but I wish I met more people in the sales world that were doing 300 to 400 sales activities a day. Like, I rarely see any SDRs that are cranking out 100 calls, 50 to 200 LinkedIn messages, hundreds of personalized emails. Like, now it's easier than ever to prospect people. You have all the leads everywhere, whether it's Seamless or LinkedIn or DMB or wherever. you've got all these scripts, these technologies, like where you could automate the emailing, automate the calling. Like, I don't know. What are your thoughts around, like, are people cranking? Do you feel like they're keeping the activity up, or you feel like it's getting lazy?
Probably a little bit of both, but from the standpoint that the world's kind of become multi-channel. Most decision makers, as you know, are mobile these days. So they're not sitting behind the desk like they were in 1992. Since the advent of the cell phone and the iPhone in particular, about 10, 11 years ago, things have changed. So you got to have a combination of phone, email, and social. The big crutch that I see, though, among young folks in particular, is they use the excuse that they've got to do all this pre-call research. And in many cases, I think that's to get away from the fear of rejection. One of the things, if I could instill among SDRs in particular, is there's no way around what I call the grind. I don't care who you're calling, what you're selling, what personas you're talking to. 80 to 85% of the time, nobody's home and nobody's interested. Can you survive the grind to get to the 10 to 15% that say, what do you got, Brandon? And most folks can't. And so in order to avoid the grind and the rejection that's going to come with an inevitable interaction with a big persona, we want to spend 20, 30 minutes researching the company and try and craft an email, for example, that's going to overcome every objection before they even hit us with it. And that simply is a recipe for failure. So you have to get into your mindset. Maybe it's not 300 or 400 calls because, there are many cases that you're going to want to leave a voicemail. It does help you build a brand. But there's no reason why you can't do 50 to, in some cases, 100 calls a day. And you could easily do that many or more emails, even if you've got to send them after hours. And set aside 30 minutes to an hour a day, whether it's in one block or two blocks in particular, to reach out on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and Twitter.
Yeah, I love that. And you're so good at social. That's how we got connected, was through social. And I read your LinkedIn profile and I just loved it. Right when I read it a while ago, maybe a year ago, and I was like, damn, I got to connect with this guy. I got to figure out what he's all about. The million cold calls, the 2,500 qualified leads, all the followers, the millions of views. Like, I love that, man. And you've been a big proponent of leveraging all these channels. And so tell me, last part, tell us a little bit about from where you started in MarketSource till today. Walk us through that, and then let's dive into your top sales secret, just because I know time is tight.
Yeah. 12 years ago, when I started with the company, as I mentioned, there was no cell phone, or it was in its very early stages. So it was more about cold calling and trying to find the right email scripts, that got a reaction and help create demand that eventually leads to a pipeline. In the last 2 years, though, as you just mentioned, LinkedIn in particular for me has exploded. And it started when I did a text post a little over a year ago on, the 10 secrets to cold calling. And it's still on my page somewhere. That one post has been seen 400,000 times and has over 3,000 likes and comments. And then I started to incorporate, video. You've done a lot more video. I've kind of gotten away from it. I need to get back into it. But the combination of writing a text post and doing an occasional video around a topic that both SDRs and key decision makers are going to find valuable, I was literally getting 50 to 100 connect requests every day. And I've gotten to the point now where I'm very selective on what I accept because, as you know, the limit is 30,000. So I want to make sure the last couple of thousand, are folks that I really intend on working with.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. It's crazy how social, one post could change your life.
Absolutely. And, I've gotten a huge kick to use you as an example.
Oh,
When you're
really?
doing the EDM stuff, when I first saw that, I was like, what is this kid doing? And now I found myself looking forward to the next one.
That's
And my dad used to tell me, and he passed away, as I mentioned, a few
thank you.
months ago. He used to say, son, you got to be different. You got to be different. You can't be the same as everybody else. So whether it's, me doing my walkabout videos on the side of the road or you doing the EDM, it's different. It sticks out. It's unique and it's you. And that's why and how you're able to generate buzz and create connections and ultimately business relationships that can take you and your family to the next level.
Yeah. That's crazy, man. I gotta look up that post that you did. I haven't seen it. I'd love to see it and just share it with our team and the community. So we'll be sure to do that. And great advice from your father. Again, best wishes to him from above.
Yep.
Uh,
Appreciate
when it
that.
when it comes to, and it's interesting too, by the way, the 27,000, because I'm at 25,000 and I'm getting freaked out. It's crazy how your anxiety level, you're like, oh, I want to max out my connections. But then when you start to max it out, you start to freak out. My freak out level and anxiety is dramatically increased uh, because I don't want to not be able to add or connect with people on LinkedIn. What happens?
Yeah. So what I've found myself doing is in the old days when I was getting 50 to 100 a year or so ago every day, I would pretty much accept anybody, particularly if they were from the States, and they had, a title and a look that was presentable. Now I find myself going back to the person's profile, seeing whether or not it's a persona that I might be able to work with. And that is what I'm more likely to accept. Now, if I do get an invite request from SDRs, and I do get some from time to time, if they send me a note in particular on the connect request on why they want to connect with me, and it's a young person that wants to learn a few things, I'm probably going to take that. But you're going to find as you get closer to that limit of 30,000, there is a level of, is this person going to enhance me and my business? And if not, I'm probably going to have to pass.
Yeah. It's sad. I mean, I just recently got into the blocking game. So luckily, thankfully, because I do a lot of crazy shit on LinkedIn, um, the 25,000 connections have pretty much supported what we're doing and what we're building and our mission to positively impact a billion people, which I'm loud about. But you'll always have kind of haters or trolls as you go throughout the journey. I've only had a few, like 1 to 10 so far, which is great. But they get so loud that I just literally I block them, and they will get no benefit from me or my network ever again. And the great news about blocking on LinkedIn is that they get removed as a connection, and they don't get to benefit from your network, and they will never see anything you post ever again. So if you ever have any haters, figure out where the block button is. That's my favorite button for the haters and trolls, because I don't give a shit. Like, I'm going all out, right? I'm going all out to help my network. And if you're going to try to not support us and our mission to positively impact a billion people, you're kind of dead to me. Like, you don't need to be for it. Like, we're different. You don't need to be like on the train. You could be off the train. But if you're the guy throwing wood to crash the train, you're dead to me. And I'm gonna hit the block button. And kind of like what you had mentioned, like if you're not adding value, I worry less about the value. Just maybe it's just because of where I'm at. But like I kind of accept everyone. I probably shouldn't, but I'm still accepting everyone. But I'm pretty. I hit the block button and remove them if it gets bad real quick. Have you had any haters yet or no?
I got some when I did the cold call post, largely because there are those, most people hate to do it, or they're trying to figure out a way to get around it. They want to do 100% social. So the social selling crowd was kind of vicious at times. But I probably don't have the same leeway that you do to really push the envelope. And that's what I admire about CEOs or folks that are self-employed. It's you and your company that you primarily have to worry about. In my current role, I'm one of several hundred folks, and I've got to be careful to some degree on what I say.
Yeah, billion-dollar company, man. You got a big company, so I totally get it.
Yeah, and my biggest message while we're on the subject real quick is those that are out trolling or hating on folks that are trying to add value, it reflects more upon them when they say something that's, you know, an attack. It's not making Brandon or Jason look bad. It's making the quote hater or those that are attacking others look bad. And I think if people would stop and think about the damage they're doing, not to Brandon, but to themselves, because everyone else that sees the post is going to say, why is that guy or gal on the attack? Why are they calling somebody names who's, you know, look, he might be a little over the top, Brandon. He might have, you know, an EDM lifestyle, but he's trying to affect 1 billion people. And do I really need to call him names or in the process make myself look very unprofessional?
Yeah, that's a good point. You know, the people that criticize others are typically the people that look the worst. And I've got a rule. I don't criticize people. You know, even if you're doing something big and it's crazy, and it's out there, but you're on a mission to help a lot of people, I just respect it. I prefer to respect it, and I prefer to try to learn from it. Like, that's why I was so excited to interview you. Like, people could criticize you on your LinkedIn profile that you're like, I've got 1 million cold calls since 1992, 50 face-to-face meetings, 2,500 qualified leads, 27,000 LinkedIn followers, and 3 million views. They could be like, this guy's a jackass. This guy's cocky. This guy thinks he knows sales. The first thing that came to my mind when I read it was, this guy's fucking awesome. Who is this guy? I'm like, hey, who's making 1 million cold calls, and what can I learn from this guy? Like, I loved it.
Yeah, and what they don't see, and most of that was, again, when I was in the brokerage business for 14 years, especially the first 10. As I got into managing my own money, I was making a lot less than that. And I don't make 300 to 400 dials a day now, but I come really close to that when you do the multi-channel approach. I send thousands of emails every week. I'm doing hundreds of social touches, including in-mails via Navigator. I'm always maxing out. I think the monthly limit is 90. And I've even progressed into some texting, very semi-formal. So just to give the audience real quick how I have generated over 2,000 qualified leads and helped bring in over 125 new customers, I like to send the email first. I think the email helps warm your list, so to speak, but it also starts to develop your brand. So I like to send an email, and within 24 hours or so, I follow it up with a phone call. Because nobody does that. Everyone's spamming, you know, prospects with email, but they're not following up with the phone call shortly thereafter. I'll then reach out in the next day or two on LinkedIn and send a real soft either connect request or a short 2 or 3 sentence in-mail via Navigator. And then if I'm going to a show in particular like CES, which we're going to attend in Vegas in January, I might say something in a text like, hey, Brandon, are you going to CES? Would love to connect. Jason at MarketSource. That 1, 2, 3, 4 step, and then, of course, you rinse and repeat over the course of a 1 to 2 month period is how I'm, you know, we're setting at least a meeting every day, and in some cases 2. So I've, for the last 3 years, been able to generate 250 to 300 meetings a year, all with key personas at Fortune 1000 accounts.
Wow. That's incredible, man. I love
but the important thing to note is all the rejection that goes with that. I still am not able to get around the fact that 85 to 90% of people are not going to answer the phone. Response rates on email, no matter how good your subject line and message is, are around 2 to 4%. So Jason's still not getting a response from 97% of the email that he's sending. But when you take the multi-channel approach as you have and you start doing video, you're going to start to notice what I have now is when you make the quote cold call, if you've been nurturing your list via email and you've been putting out written and video content on LinkedIn and Twitter, I'm now starting to get people say, yeah, you know, didn't I see your video on LinkedIn, or didn't I read one of the blogs that you wrote? Yeah. So when you take this multi-channel approach and you put yourself out there, everything, including cold calling, is going to become more effective. I think you just muted. I can't hear you.
Okay.
There you go. There you go.
I'm back. I like to try. I love the mute button. Dude, wow. That's incredible, Jason. I mean, the guy that's made over 1 million cold calls, guy that's got 27,000 LinkedIn followers, 3 million views, 2,500 qualified leads, you know, 7 billion of revenue growth for your clients. The audience now is dying to know. Finally, and by the way, typically I don't let intros go this long. The feature and the intro in the background. This shit is too good. You know, like working at Oakland Stratmount's competitor is too good. Working in the stock brokerage and selling to accredited investors day in and day out is too good. And then running outsourced sales programs for a multi-billion-dollar company is too good to like fast track through. That shit's like gold. So we had to take some time to go over that. So now, Jason, audience is dying to know, you know, sales secrets from the top 1%. The world's best sales experts share their secrets to sales success. What is your top sales secret? The one secret that you would tell yourself when you first got back into sales. What's the one secret, the one thing, the absolute one idea, strategy, tip, best practice that you would give yourself and to the audience here today? And if you had to boil it down to one thing.
If I had to boil it down to one thing, and it might be anticlimactic for most of the audience, I'll even give you the drum roll, Brandon. You got to be in it to win it. You got to be in it to win it from the standpoint that, as I mentioned earlier in this conversation, whether you're going to make 1 million cold calls over a 27-year period, or you're going to send out thousands of emails and social touches on LinkedIn, Twitter, etc., you cannot get around the fact that most of your time in the sales business is going to be a grind. There's going to be massive amounts of rejection and failure. You experienced that when you were trying to raise money for the company. I don't care who you are or who you're calling on. 80 to 90% of the sales game is rejection. So what I've learned over the last 27 years is I have to place myself in the path of opportunity. I have faith after 27, almost 30 years, massive amounts of rejection, but also an incredible amount of success, that if I'm in it, I'm going to win it. If I'm on the phone making the dials, if I'm generating email scripts that create demand, if I'm cranking out written posts and video as you are on LinkedIn, if I'm experimenting with new strategies like text, or even snail mail, which to some degree is making a comeback, then I'm going to win. And one of the biggest problems or challenges that I see with young SDRs is they're always looking for a shortcut. They think that there's a magical amount of pre-call research that they're going to do that's going to help them become a top producer. And there's not. I think you have a hashtag. There is no Q5 or quarter number 5, right?
There is no Q5.
You have to get up. You have to get up. And I've seen some of your videos at 4:30 in the morning. They're very inspiring. There's no way around the fact that you have to be in it to win it. You got to show up every day. I take very little vacation, probably to my own detriment. But the reason is because, A, I love what I do, and I know that sales to some degree is a numbers game. You have to make the phone calls. You have to send the email. You've got to do the social touch. You've got to create your own content, build your own brand. And then you got to rinse and repeat. And most reps will not survive what I call the grind. They cannot handle the fact that it's not going to be a 12 to 18 month journey. If you're going to have the kind of success we've had at MarketSource, when you start with virtually nothing, you're a sub $100 million company, and then you fast forward 12 years, you're representing dozens of Fortune 1000 brands, and every single year, as you mentioned at the top, We're generating over $7 billion of net new revenue every single year. 2 years ago, it was $6 billion. Then it was $6.5 billion. Now it's over $7 billion of net new revenue every single year for our clients.
How big is that? Is MarketSource? So you guys have generated over $7 billion for these clients. How revenue wise? How big are you guys?
We're just under $500 million a year, about 10,000 employees.
Dude, I'm dreaming of I'm dreaming. Mark my words. I will build a company like that.
And by the way,
need your help. I'm gonna need your help to do that.
Absolutely.
To win it.
Absolutely. And by the way, as you know, nobody does it alone. I'm one of hundreds of folks that are on my team. I'm showing up every day to share my experience, particularly when it comes to cold calling, building demand inside. But I'm surrounded by practice leads and BDs and leadership that is working really hard every day to get the job done.
Yeah. So in it to win it, that grind, that hustle, a lot of what we talked about today, right? Going through your history, selling for the brokerage firms, selling at MarketSource. How does one get in it to win it? You know, let's just say they don't have it or they're struggling with it and they can't find a way to get in it to win it. Like, you know, let's just say you hire someone and they're kind of performing average and they're not hitting their numbers. How do you inspire them, coach them, train them, whatever you do? What do you do to get them in it to win it?
That's a great question. There's an old saying that most important thing is that you get the right people on the bus. Once you've got the right people on the bus, we're going to figure out through the twists and turns of where we need to be and what we need to do. My advice to a young SDR in particular, or somebody who's in senior leadership like yourself, it's one thing to love what you do. It's very difficult, particularly when you're young, to figure that out in your early 20s, because in most cases you don't know. But what is easy to figure out is, do I love the folks that I'm doing it with? So if I'm somebody that's an SDR coming to interview with Brandon, or I'm sitting down and I want to be on Jason's team, first thing in my mind is, do I like Brandon? Do I think that he and I can work our ass off together and build something special? And if the answer is no, or I'm not sure, you're in the wrong place. So you got to get the right people on the bus. And the same thing goes for you. If you're interviewing someone, particularly if they're young, and you're not sure if they've got what it takes, there better be some level of camaraderie. You need to see that twinkle in his or her eye that there's something there that I want to explore, and I think I can get along with this person, because it's not going to be easy, as you know. There's going to be plenty of downs to go with the ups. But if you enjoy working with each other, as I did way back in the day when I was in the boiler rooms with 200 or 300 kids my age, you're going to figure it out. And I think the love of what you do comes over time.
Wow. Yeah, that's amazing. I really appreciate that advice. I used to be someone that would hire slow and fire slow. I would hire slow and I'd fire slow. And over the years, I now kind of hire fast. I want to give a lot of people opportunity. And then I don't like to use the word fire. I call it like not a good fit fast, right? Like,
Yeah.
Because, dude, we're like, for us, you know, I'd love to hear you. Like, we're growing so fast. We went from 5 to 50 people in 3 months. Like, and I don't, you know, I'm the CEO and founder that's DJing and that's doing a reality TV show for sales. Like, while we're also spending 18 hours a day building our sales leads platform, right? So like, we're doing a lot of crazy shit. We're growing fast. We're building fast. We're failing fast. We're failing forward. We need people that take action, that are coachable, that are energetic, and that will do whatever it takes, regardless of win or losing, to get back up instantly to go fight and win again. And I'm with you. Like, I don't have time. It's unfortunate. Like, I don't have time. If you're not in it to win it, you may be bad at sales, but if you're highly coachable, and I think I could train you and coach you
Yeah.
to get there, than fucking money. I had a guy that was average at sales. I mean, he was working for this company, this consulting company that's massive, $1 billion company. And he was average at sales because the company that trained him was average. They just didn't, he was terrible sales training. And he prospected us and it was terrible. But you could tell he was trying so hard, like personalize the emails, would personalize the calls, personalize the LinkedIn messages, keep trying to add value. Like would send me messages that Merry Christmas, Happy Thanksgiving, Happy New Year's, like all the shit that people don't do anymore. I'm like, dude, like if this guy got some coaching on how to do this, like he's got the hustle. And every time I gave him feedback, he would optimize working at his other company to reach back out at me. I'm like, fuck, he's coachable. He hustles. He works hard. I was like, I'm going to tell him he should work for us. So I told him, and now he's literally one of our top performing people. And then the opposite, the people that, I don't know, you've got way more experience than me, so I want to hear your thoughts here. The opposite, I've got people that don't work hard, that aren't coachable, and I keep hoping. I smoke what I call the hopium, and I hope that they get better with more coaching and with more push. And for me, I've never seen it happen. I've never seen the people that, aren't giving it their all, that aren't working hard to train and optimize and be coached, and that's why we try to, you're not a good fit for us.
I agree 1,000%. And that desire to win and to show up every day and give it your all, it's very hard to find these days. I'll give you an example. We hire about 500 people a week for our programs. So we're out driving $7 billion in net new revenue. And in the process of managing those sales teams, we are literally hiring 500 people a week. We've got 130 recruiters in a building across the street that work for our BDs and putting these programs together. And so when you do thousands of interviews literally every month to find the, let's call them millennial for lack of a word, anybody, let's say, that's under the age of 40, okay, to show up and say, look, I don't know much about this business, but what I do know is that I'm going to show up every single day. I'm going to work my ass off. I'm very coachable. I know that I don't know everything, but if you'll just give me a chance, I can promise that I'm going to come through for you. We see that sort of attitude maybe 1 in 10. And it goes beyond the millennials. It even affects our generation and older. There's a level of entitlement that has festered since the social, era has evolved, that I'm just going to show up. I'm going to be here for 12 to 18 months, and then I'm on my way. And oh, by the way, if I don't have full benefits, and if you're not going to give me at least 2 weeks of vacation off, I'm out of here. So I'm with you 1,000%. I interview SDRs that, basically help generate pre-qualified demand for myself. The most important thing I look for is that eye of the tiger. Do they have the hunger, the desire to succeed? Because as you've learned, you can train someone on how to, quote, overcome an objection, or you can train someone to understand that, look, if you want to generate a meeting a day, you're going to have to make 100 phone calls and send out an equal number of email. And as you become more skilled and successful over time, maybe the numbers come down a little bit, but if you're not in it to win it every day, if you're not showing up at 8 o'clock or earlier in many cases, or as I am, if you're not working LinkedIn most nights of the week until midnight, sending out email or responding to dozens of email that you get from when you have 25 or 30,000 connections, you're not going to make it. You will not be successful.
Wow. How do you, did I lose my mic or am I good?
You're gargling a little bit.
Hold on. Better now or no?
I think it has to do with how close or far away from the mic you get.
So weird. Am I back? No.
Say it again.
Hey, it's Brandon Bordanson here at.
Now you're gargling again.
God, I wonder what's the gargle from. It's not making any sense.
And it may be just on my end. It may not be on the recording. I don't know. Are you able to hear any of it?
No, but I see that the mic dramatically dropped. So like, it looks like someone using different wires. I keep switching the wires. I've got 7 monitors, so
I wonder if it's the computer. 1 second.
let's try this again. Hello.
There you go. Now you're perfect.
Unbelievable.
So now you've got a learning experience. When you hear the gargling as you play the video back, at least you learned what it is, so it won't happen the next time.
Yeah, it's got something to do. Am I sounding okay right now?
Absolutely perfect now.
Okay, great. Sorry about that. It's got to do with, I think for some reason, all the 7 monitors, plus when I get a Slack message in, it screws up the Zoom. I don't know. Anyways, how do you gauge, how the hell do you identify if someone is in it to win it? That's like the hardest thing for me as a young entrepreneur that wants to hire people like me that I know will go to fucking war to win in the game of sales, in the game of life. How do you, who's done this 100 times over, figure that out?
It goes back to 1992 when I went to the interview to become a broker. They only asked me one question. I sat across from a guy in a 3-piece suit, and he just staring at me with his slick back hair. And I won't use the language that he used, but he said, "Why the fill in the blank should I hire you?" That's all he said to me. So why the hell, or worse, should I hire you? And he just shut up and sat there. I think the reaction that you get from a question like that, minus the profanity, is going to say a lot about the person that you're going to hire. If they're slouched back in the chair and they're struggling to find words as to why they should hire you, probably not going to be a good fit. But if they sit up in their chair and they give you that posture and that energy and that gleam in their eye that, I don't have all the answers, Jason or Brandon, but I'm going to figure it out. I'm going to show up every day. I'm going to work my ass off. In fact, I'll do whatever it is that you need me to do in the beginning because I want to be successful. Or back then it was, I want to make a lot of money. I want to make a difference in my life and those around me. If they don't have that within 10 or 15, 20 seconds, they're probably never going to get it. So I love to ask questions that are open-ended like that, that show me something about their personality.
Yeah, that makes total sense. That's amazing. Why the hell should we hire you? Period.
Another version of that is, why do you want to work here? But I love the why. Why should I hire you?
Oh, it's just so straightforward.
And I would rather than get the, well, I'm educated here and, I've worked there. I'd rather get someone who doesn't have all the answers, but has plenty of the passion. Show me the grit. Show me the gleam. Show me the fight. Show me someone who's going to show up every day, because sales, as you know, is full of rejection. 90% of it is rejection. No, you don't get 120 some odd clients in 10 years. You're not driving $7 billion of revenue as an entire organization unless you're falling on your face thousands of times, month in and month out. And if I can see the desire to be successful, the willingness to do whatever it takes, especially to survive the grind, I'm much more apt to hire someone like that than someone who gives me a half-hearted response related to education or where they came from.
Oh, that's so good. That is so good. I mean, we need that a lot. Like, we need that advice here because, man, it's hard to identify winners from losers or winners from average. And some people want to be average, and that's fine. I'm interested in hiring the game changers, the A players.
And what you need to do, you'd asked me a few minutes ago, how do you use whatever advice I'm trying to give? And I love it when you said you got to fail fast, you got to fail forward. But what you also have to do is you need to put yourself in the shoes of who you're talking to, because we've been there, right? We've been in the interview where we're totally clueless. Maybe you're coming off of bankruptcy. Maybe you just got fired from a job.
Yep.
we have to be empathetic to the position that they're in, but we also owe it to them to say, look, here's what I expect of you up front. I expect you to be here at such and such time every day. I expect you to make 50, 100, 200, whatever the number is, calls and emails every single day. I expect you to have that fight, that willingness to do whatever it takes in the beginning, because if you don't have that, if you show me a lack of desire to win or be successful that first 30 days, then Mr. or Mrs. Candidate, I owe it to you to let you go, because it's not going to be a good fit. And you can set your head down at night knowing that you did the right thing, Brandon, by making that crystal clear up front.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, I know, I'm sure the audience knows, but I know for sure we got to do a better job of making that up front, being highly transparent, highly accountable. Here's what's expected of you every day in and day out. Why the hell do you want to work here?
And there's got to be a level of humility from us as leaders, because we don't have all the answers. And if you're trying to build a company, as both of us are, we're going to make a lot of mistakes. So don't be afraid to tell a candidate, look, we're failing fast here. We're failing forward. Half the things that I tell you to do in the next 6 months are going to be wrong. But guess what? If you work here and give me everything that it takes to be successful, we're going to figure it out. And if you get that head nodding and you get that, they want to bust out of a caged animal.
Yeah, like a football player ready to go to war.
Yeah, you hire that person. But if you get the laid back, well, I'm not really sure why you should hire me, probably not going to be a good fit, and you need to be clear about that up front.
Wow. And then what about if it's someone, that's amazing advice. Thank you so much, Jason. What if it's someone that looks good on paper? So, Jason, I'd love to work at MarketSource. I went to Stanford. I've got my MBA. I did sales at Marketo, and then I worked at Salesforce.com. So I've got 2 years at Marketo, 2 years at Salesforce.com. Really, really excited about what I could do for you over there. And, just excited to get started. Like, how do you handle the person that looks good at a high level, like on paper? How do you figure out, is this person in it to win it?
You just said it, total transparency. So I would turn it around and I would say, Mr. and Mrs. Candidate, I got to be honest with you. You look tremendous on paper. You went to school here. You worked at two of our major partners. I probably won't interview anybody better than you on paper in the next 2 months. But tell me, Jason, Brandon, why in the hell should I hire you? What is it about you as a person, you as a competitor, that should give you an opportunity to work here? And if they can't spin away from the resume and give you from a gut level what it is about them internally that they feel is going to make them successful, then they're not going to make it at Seamless.ai or MarketSource.
Wow. Yeah, that's amazing, man. I really appreciate that advice. This is a lot of great advice around hustle, hard work, failure, success, ups and downs, hiring talent, which I think is critical, hiring the right sales talent. And for those of you out there that want to go from good to great, you know what great leaders like Jason and myself are looking for when we're looking to hire the best of the best. Last question. Do you typically like have a pretty in-depth scorecard when you're interviewing and scoring candidates, or is it just you kind of roll with that and give them a score from 1 to 10?
Yeah.
Because you interview a lot of people. I don't interview as many people as you do. So
yeah, I'm not interviewing a ton of people. I can say that our recruiters, like I said, we're putting 500 people to work every single week. So we do have, whether it's our SDRs that we hire or
salespeople,
reps that we're putting on a program, there's a very elaborate scorecard. I'll give you one example. If it's an inside sales role, we actually have that person call us up and sell us a particular product or a service. So we'll say, I'll use you an example.
Yep.
We're in the business of selling the world's greatest or the world's best sales leads. Here's the persona that you're calling on. I want you to pretend that I'm a CFO or a CEO. Call me up on the phone, develop a script, call me up on the phone and sell me the product. If they get bogged down in the panic of not being able to do the research to at least get a basic idea of what Seamless or MarketSource is all about, then they're probably not going to make it. But if they have good presentation skills, if they have that enthusiasm on the phone, and if it's an inside or an outside role, we actually do videotape. So we will videotape them trying to sell a product or a service. So there's a written test that we give, there's a audio recording or a video that we do, and then if it's like a serious role in terms of, let's say, a business development executive that's on my team, they'll go through a series of 2 or 3 panel interviews where there'll be anywhere from 4 or 5 executives on the team from various departments that are there to assess the character of the person that's interviewing and to ask some really, really tough questions. So it's not easy to work at MarketSource. And in my opinion, it shouldn't be easy to work at Seamless either.
That's amazing. Wow. Well, I feel like we've got another 1,000 segments that we can do. Jason, this was one of my all-time favorite conversations, man. I had no idea. Like, I researched your background. Like, you and I have been connected and engaged socially. I feel like I know you for years, and socially we're always talking about these different topics and supporting each other to maximize our growth. But we got to have you back on the show. But for now, I'm thrilled to share your sales secret to sales success. Make sure you are in it to win it, and you are someone that's going to give it your all, to be in it to win it for the long haul. And, really thank you so much, Jason, for joining us again. Jason is the Director of Inside Sales at MarketSource, where he's been crushing it for the past 7 years, specializing in B2B sales, lead generation, social selling, all of the above. And they're driving more than $7 billion for revenue growth. Jason, where can people find you, connect with you? I hope the world hits you up because of this Hype Man podcast, because, dude, I seriously know I've got like 10 things I'm going to apply to my business instantly. Fucking thank you, man.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing this stuff. This is great.
Yeah. First of all, a big pleasure being on the show, Brandon. It's an honor of mine. I've really enjoyed seeing you transform and grow over the last 12 months. I think Seamless.ai is really onto something, and whatever I can do to help take your business to the next level, I will certainly do that. If the folks listening want to get a hold of me, it's primarily on LinkedIn, and it's real simple. It's just my name, linkedin.com/Jason McElhone.
Yep, that's JASON space MCELHONE.
Yeah.
Jason McElhone.
Yeah, and if they want to send me an email, it's jason.mcelhone@marketsource.com.
Yep, and you can get his emails and phone numbers at Seamless.ai. I'm just kidding, Jason. Wow, thank you so much. Again, this is Sales Secrets from the Top 1%, where the world's best sales experts share their secrets to sales success. Jason McElhone, thank you so much today. We appreciate you and wish you the best this next year. It's going to be a huge one.
Been a pleasure, Brandon. Thank you very much.